I don't even know where to start without sounding like a total mess, but here goes. I've always been the kind of guy who trusted too easily, I guess. Built my life around honesty, loyalty, the classic stuff. I work hard, come home, and try to keep things simple. My wife, Lisa, has always seemed like she was the perfect girl. Sweet, caring, a little bit quirky, but dependable. We'd been together for 6 years, married for 3, and honestly, I thought we were solid. Until the day I wasn't so sure anymore. It started with a little nagging feeling. Something was off, but I chalked it up to nerves. I had been away on a week-long business trip. My job takes me on the road more often than I like, but I always call, always check in. I was good at that, or so I thought. That trip, everything felt different. Lisa was clingy before I left, extra touchy, texting constantly. I brushed it off as her being lonely or maybe just needing reassurance. But the night before I came back, she seemed tense, evasive. When I finally got home late that evening, I remember the air hitting me like a punch to the gut. The house was unusually quiet. No smell of dinner, no sound of her humming, nothing. I called her name as I stepped inside, but got no answer. I headed straight to the bedroom, expecting a warm smile, but instead I found her phone on the nightstand, screen glowing, an open message thread. I didn't even think, just grabbed the phone and flicked through. That's when I saw it. Her messages to my best friend, Mark. They'd been chatting for weeks. Flirty stuff, inside jokes, miss you, can't wait to see you, all wrapped up in a bubble of lies. My stomach dropped, hot and tight like a clenched fist. My palms turned slick with sweat. I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of fury and disbelief. How long had this been going on? Was I just too blind to see it? I'd trusted her. I'd told her everything, and she'd been sneaking around behind my back. I kept reading. The messages weren't just a one-time thing. It was a slow burn growing deeper. There was talk about meeting up, plans made in secret, even stuff about how much they needed each other. My head spun. I felt a heat rise in my chest like I'd swallowed fire. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was sit there, frozen, clutching her phone so tight I thought I might crush it. I stayed up that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying all the moments that now felt fake. The way she looked at me, the little touches, the sweet words she'd said, were they all lies? How long had she been lying? How long had she been cheating? My mind was a mess, a swirl of anger, hurt, and betrayal. I couldn't unsee the evidence staring back at me. It was all so clear now. She'd been lying right to my face. The next morning, I woke up with a clenched jaw and a decision burning in my chest. I knew I couldn't let this go. Not anymore. Not after seeing what I'd seen. I had to do something. Something to make her feel what I felt, the sting of betrayal. I didn't want to just kick her out or yell. I wanted her to understand the damage she'd done, and I wanted my revenge to be something she'd never forget. I started planning as I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the cold sweat on my palms. I'd make her pay. The thing about revenge, I realized, is that it's about control, about turning the tables. I didn't want her to just apologize and move on. I wanted her to know that I knew that I'd catch her and that I was done being the fool. I needed a plan. That's when I decided. I'd take her secrets, her lies, her trust, and I'd throw them right back in her face. But I had to be smart. I needed something irreversible, something she wouldn't see coming. I started gathering evidence, setting the stage, and figuring out how I'd confront her, because I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to make sure she felt every second of her betrayal. And when I finally did confront her, it would be on my terms and she'd regret it. That's where I'm at now, sitting here thinking about what's next, about how to make her regret lying to me. I'm not finished yet, not by a long shot. The next few days dragged by like thick fog. I couldn't sleep much, kept replaying that scene in my head, her phone, the messages, the way the words cut into me like a knife. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the way she looked at me with that innocent smile, hiding the truth. My stomach clenched tight every time I thought about how long she'd been lying, how deep her betrayal ran, not just with Mark, but with everything we'd built. I knew I had to act, but I also knew I couldn't just blow up and let her see me lose control. That wouldn't serve my purpose. I had to be cold, calculated. I started by going through her phone again, making sure I hadn't missed anything. There were texts, photos, even exchanged emails I hadn't seen at first glance. I downloaded everything onto my laptop, making sure I'd have undeniable proof when the time came. I told myself I needed certainty before confronting her face to face. One thing I noticed, her phone was always with her, always within reach, whenever she was home. But I also noticed she wasn't very good at hiding her secret meetings. I knew Mark's schedule too. I watched her from a distance, tracking her movements when I could. She'd go out for work dinners, but I knew better. I saw her dress up, the way her eyes darted around nervously. It was all so obvious in retrospect. I decided I needed a backup plan just in case she tried to deny everything or spin it around on me. I contacted a private investigator, someone I knew wouldn't ask questions. I gave him a simple task: follow her, gather any evidence of her being with Mark outside of the house. I didn't want to get caught and blow my entire plan. I just wanted to have everything lined up perfectly before I made a move. The pie got back to me 2 days later. He had photos, plenty of them, her sneaking out late at night, meeting Mark at a cafe, even a quick kiss in a parking lot. The proof was undeniable. I looked at the pictures, felt my fists tighten, my jaw clench so hard I thought I'd crack a tooth. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a full-blown affair, and she'd been hiding it from me for who knows how long. Now I was ready to confront her. I knew what I had to say, but I also knew I had to be careful. I couldn't just shout and scream, even if I felt like ripping her apart. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. I started planning the moment. I'd do it when she least expected, maybe after she got home from work when she'd be least prepared. I'd sit her down, show her the evidence, and watch her crumble. But I also wanted to see her reaction, to watch her try to lie her way out of it. I knew her too well. She'd deny everything, insist it was nothing, try to make me doubt myself. That's when I realized I needed a backup, that I'd catch her in the act, or at least force her into a corner where she couldn't deny it anymore. I had to make sure she saw that I knew, that I had proof in hand, and that there was no way out. I bought a cheap but reliable voice recorder. I planned to hide it somewhere in the living room, set it to record when she came home. I wanted her to slip up, say something she wouldn't realize I'd catch. I'd be waiting, sitting in the dark, listening to her lies unravel as she found out I wasn't as clueless as she thought. All of this was just the beginning. I couldn't believe I was doing it. It felt like a sick game, but honestly, I was beyond caring. I just wanted her to understand what betrayal really looked like. I wanted her to feel the pain that I felt every time I thought about her secret meetings, her lies, every single one. The night before the confrontation, I sat in my chair, staring at the hidden recorder, my fingers clenched into fists. My head was pounding, a thousand thoughts racing. Was I going too far, or was this just justice? I kept telling myself I was doing what I needed to do. No matter what, I wouldn't be the fool again. This time I'd get the truth and she'd have nowhere left to run. The plan was set. All I had to do now was wait for her to come home, press record, and finally hold her accountable. She thought she'd get away with it. She thought she could lie and cheat and I'd never find out. Well, she was wrong. Next step, I'd make her own betrayal come crashing down on her like a ton of bricks. That night, I was on edge in a way I've never been before. The house was dead silent, every creak or whistle of the wind sounding like a gunshot in my ears. I set the recorder discreetly near the living room, where I knew she'd walk in. My palms were sweaty, and I kept glancing at the clock, counting down the minutes until I'd finally get to hear what she'd say when she thought she was alone. I sat in the dark, the only light coming from my laptop screen, watching the time tick by. Every time I heard a car pull up or a door close, my heart hammered in my chest. When I finally heard her keys in the door, I felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with nausea. Her footsteps, hesitant and soft, carried her into the house. I pressed play on the recorder and settled into my chair, waiting for her to walk into the living room. It was quiet for a moment, then the door clicked shut. She appeared in the archway, looking tense but trying to hide it. The moment she saw me sitting there, her face went blank. She paused, then a nervous laugh escaped her lips. "Hey," she said, voice a little too casual. "What are you doing here?" I kept my voice steady, though my stomach was twisting. "I've been waiting for you," I said. "I thought we should talk." The recorder was running, capturing every word. Her eyes flicked nervously around the room. She hesitated before stepping closer. "Look, I don't know what you think you have, but..." "Oh, I think you do," I interrupted, voice low but sharp. I reached into my pocket and pulled out her phone, which I'd taken the day before. I turned it toward her. "I found these messages, Lisa. You've been lying to me for weeks. Do you want to tell me what's going on?" Her face paled and her hands trembled slightly. "It's not what it looks like," she mumbled, trying to brush past me. But I stepped forward and blocked her path. "You're damn right it's not what it looks like," I said, voice rising. "It looks like you've been cheating on me with my best friend. That's the truth. Isn't it?" Her eyes welled with tears, but she shook her head. "It was just a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. A mistake." I snapped. "You call this a mistake?" I pointed to the phone. "You've been talking to Mark for weeks. Planning meetings, secret meetings, kissing in parking lots. How much more do you think I need before I see what you really are?" She looked down, silent, her shoulders trembling. I pressed the button on the recorder, the faint hum filling the room. "This is what I've been waiting for, to hear you admit it." For a long moment she said nothing. Then she looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I was stupid. I was lonely, okay? I didn't mean for it to go this far. Please, I love you. I don't want your apologies," I said, voice cold. "You lied to me, cheated on me, and I don't know if I can forgive that, but I do know you're not going to get away with it." She reached out, voice cracking. "Please, don't do this. We can fix it." "I'll stop, I swear." I cut her off. Hand raised. "You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a set of keys. "Here's your house key, take it, leave tonight, don't come back. I want nothing to do with someone who can betray me like this." Her eyes widened in shock and she backed away. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I said, voice unwavering. "You had your chance to be honest, but instead you chose to lie. So I'm giving you what you wanted, freedom. But don't think for a second I'll forget this. You're done." She looked like she wanted to say something, but the words caught in her throat. She reached for her purse and hurried out the front door, leaving me in the silence of the house, the recorder still running. I sat down heavily, my head pounding, trying to process what had just happened. The evidence was clear now. I had her voice, her lies, her betrayal, all laid out in front of me. She was gone, and I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. For the first time in years, I felt I'd taken control. I'd finally done what I'd been planning, and I knew I'd never look at her the same way again. The only thing left was to decide what to do next. I looked at the keys in my hand, feeling the weight of what I'd just handed her. It was a clean break, the kind I needed, the kind I'd fought for. Now all I had to do was clean up the mess and move forward, but I wasn't done yet. Not quite. I still had a few things to do. One last thing, just to make sure she'd never forget what she lost. And that's when I started planning my final move. The house felt eerily quiet after she left. The silence was thick, almost oppressive, like I was drowning in it. I sat there for a moment, staring at the doorway she had just walked out of, trying to process what I'd just done. The keys still in my hand felt heavier than I expected, like they carried the weight of everything. I kept replaying her voice, her words, the way she begged and lied. The betrayal hit me harder than I thought it would. I knew I couldn't just let her go without making her feel the full brunt of what she'd done. Revenge wasn't about just hurting her, but making her understand that she had shattered everything we had. I had to show her she'd lost something real, something she'd taken for granted. That's when the idea started to take shape. I'd planned to end things clean and cold, but now I realized I needed to leave something behind, a reminder she'd never forget. I decided to take a small but pointed step. I wanted her to realize that trust, once broken, leaves scars. I went into the closet, grabbed a box of her things, photos, jewelry, little mementos, and packed them carefully. I didn't want to inflict pain just for the sake of it, but I wanted her to see what she threw away. I didn't plan to trash her stuff, but I wanted her to understand that her betrayal had consequences. The next step was more deliberate. I set her favorite pillow on the front porch with a note: "You threw away our trust. This is your last reminder." It was simple, cold even, but effective. I wanted her to see that her words, her actions had a cost. I didn't write anything else. No explanations, no apologies, just that. I knew it would cut deep, especially since she'd always been sentimental about that pillow. After I placed the pillow and note outside, I looked around the house. My stomach twisted, a mixture of anger and sadness. I didn't want to leave everything like this, but I also knew I had to cut all ties completely. I grabbed her favorite picture frame from the mantel, the one with us on vacation, and wrapped it in a towel. I would keep that for myself, a reminder of what I thought we had. I also took her phone, the one I'd hidden earlier, and deleted all her secret messages and any evidence I had stored. I wanted her to feel like she lost everything, her lies, her secrets, her connection to her affair. I didn't want her to walk away with a screenshot or a trace. I wanted her to know she'd been caught, fully exposed, with nothing left to hide behind. Before I left, I made a point to turn off the Wi-Fi in the house. No sense leaving her away to contact Mark or anyone else. I wanted her to feel isolated, cut off, and genuinely alone. I knew she'd probably try to reach out, but I didn't care. That was her problem now. I'd already taken everything I could from her, the trust, the marriage, and her lies. I was done. Driving away from the house, I felt strangely lighter yet emotionally drained. A part of me wanted to scream, a part of me wanted to cry. But mostly I felt relief. Solid, tangible relief. I'd finally done what I needed to do. I'd cut the cord. I'd made her see what she had lost. And I knew deep down that I'd never look at her the same way again. That night I stayed up late, pouring a glass of whiskey and staring at the city lights from my apartment window. The cold burn in my throat made me feel alive. I started to think about what comes next, what I needed to rebuild, how I could heal. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't be the fool anymore. I wouldn't be the one betrayed, not this time. And as I sat there, feeling the weight of everything I'd just done, I realized this was more than just about revenge. It was about reclaiming myself, about finally taking control. The house, the pictures, the keys, they all felt like symbols of the past. I was finally free to move on, free from lies, free from betrayal, and free from someone who thought she could play with my trust and walk away unscathed. Next step, I promised myself, was to focus on healing. But I also knew I'd never forget what she did. Not ever. A few days went by and I thought I'd feel better, but honestly it was a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd done the deed, wiped everything clean and cut her loose, but the ache inside wasn't subsiding. It felt more like a wound that was just starting to fester. Still, I knew I couldn't let it consume me. I had to get my focus back on myself, rebuild what was broken, and move forward. I started by blocking her number on my phone, then deleting her from social media. The last thing I needed was her popping up, trying to claw her way back in or spinning some sob story. I didn't want to hear any more lies. Honestly, I felt pretty proud of how cold I'd become. I was done being the nice guy, the one who always believed the best. This time I was going to look out for myself, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something, that maybe I hadn't done enough. I kept telling myself I'd taken everything she had to throw at me, but part of me still wondered if I'd really made her feel it. I'd handed her keys, cut her loose, left her with that pillow and note. But I wanted her to feel something more, something she wouldn't forget. I wanted her to regret what she'd done, not just now, but forever. That's when I remembered the evidence I'd hidden. The photos, the messages, everything. I knew I had one piece that could really sting, something I hadn't shown her yet. It was a final, decisive move. I had kept a copy of the most incriminating photo, one that would leave her no room to deny her betrayal. I stared at it for a long time, weighing my options. Should I show her? Or was this the kind of thing that would just leave her humiliated and bitter? I decided I wanted her to see it in person, to face the consequences of her actions head-on. But I wasn't going to do it with anger or hate. No, I wanted her to see that I was serious, that I had everything and she had nothing left. I planned to wait until I knew she'd try to contact me again, maybe reach out, trying to save her pride. That's when I dropped the bomb. I set up a meeting at a neutral place, one of those quiet coffee shops she used to love. I told her I had something important to discuss, that I wanted closure. I was calm, deliberate, and calculated. I wanted her to think I was open to reconciliation, but really I was just waiting for her to walk into my trap. I'd have the evidence ready and I'd reveal everything in one final blow. When she showed up, her eyes darted nervously around the room. She looked exhausted, like she'd been running all night. I sat across from her, cold as ice, and watched her fidget. I saw her lips tremble, her hands trembling slightly as she sipped her coffee. I took a slow breath and started the conversation. "You know why I asked to meet," I said quietly. There's something I want you to see." I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and revealed the most damning photo. Mark's face caught in a moment that told everything. The look on his face, the way she was leaning into him. It was all right there, indisputable. Her face drained of color. She stared at the screen, mouth open like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Her eyes welled with tears, guilt, shame, everything I wanted her to feel. There was a long silence before she finally whispered, "How? When?" "Doesn't matter," I said, voice steady. "You lied, you betrayed everything we had, and I'm tired of pretending it's okay. I want you to understand you lost me. Not just that, but you lost any respect I ever had for you." She looked at me, broken, silent. I saw the realization sinking in that she'd pushed me too far, that her lies had finally caught up with her. I knew I could have pushed harder, said more, but at this point I didn't see the point. The damage was done. She'd be haunted by this image forever, just as I'd be haunted by her betrayal. I reached into my bag and pulled out a set of papers, divorce papers. I slid them across the table. "Sign these. Let's end this officially. I want nothing more to do with you." I saw her hands trembling as she reached out, hesitating, then taking the pen. The final act, the last piece of the puzzle. She looked at me one last time, eyes full of regret and despair, then signed her name. I took the papers, folded them carefully, and silenced the recorder that had been quietly capturing every word. I handed her the signed documents, watching her face crumple with the weight of her choices. As she got up to leave, I caught her arm gently, not to stop her but to make sure she understood. "You threw everything away," I said quietly, "and I hope you remember that every time you look in the mirror." She nodded silently, turned, and walked out the door. I watched her go, feeling both victorious and empty. The betrayal was finally out in the open, the damage done, and I'd taken back control. But walking away from what I thought was my life, that was the hardest part. Now I had the evidence, the papers, and a fresh start. It was over. The trust was shattered and I was free. And honestly, I've never felt more certain that I'll never let someone betray me that way again. Trust is a fragile thing, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to fix. But I learned, I don't have to be a fool to be kind. Sometimes being smart means knowing when to walk away. The next few days were a strange mixture of relief and reflection. I stayed busy, sorting through everything: the divorce papers, the evidence, my own thoughts. Honestly, I felt lighter, like a massive weight had been lifted. But underneath that, there was a persistent ache I couldn't shake. I kept replaying her face, that moment she signed the papers, the look in her eyes when she realized she'd lost everything. Part of me wondered if I'd gone too far, if I'd turned into someone I didn't recognize. But deep down, I knew I'd done what I had to do. She betrayed my trust, and I was tired of being the fool. I kept the evidence, the photos, the messages in a safe place, just as insurance, in case she decided to come back with some sob story or attempt to manipulate her way into my life again. I wanted to be prepared for anything. But honestly, I didn't think she'd try. She'd already shown her hand, and I'd made it clear I wasn't interested in being part of her game anymore. The house was eerily quiet now. I had taken everything I wanted, her things, the pillow, the photos, and left her with nothing but memories. The note on the pillow still haunted me, asterisk, "You threw away our trust." That simple line summed up everything I'd been feeling. That betrayal wasn't just a mistake, it was a choice. A choice she made, and now she had to live with the consequences. I spent a lot of time outside, walking, clearing my head. The fresh air helped a little. I started to think about what I'd do next, how I'd rebuild my life from scratch. I realized that I'd been giving her too much of myself over the years, trying to be perfect, trying to hold everything together. Now, I knew I needed to focus on myself, to heal, to find happiness. Again, one morning I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and watched the sunrise. The sky was painted in hues of pink and orange, a quiet reminder that every ending also signals a new beginning. I thought about the future, what it would look like without her lies, without her betrayal. I felt a strange sense of peace, like finally getting a breathe after holding my breath for too long. I also reached out to my friends, told them what had happened. Their support was a balm, a reminder that I wasn't alone, that I didn't have to carry this weight in silence. I realized I'd been so focused on her, on figuring out how to handle the betrayal, that I'd forgotten about the people who truly cared. Their advice and comfort helped me see things more clearly. I'd been through hell, but I was still standing. Looking back, I can see what I did right and what I could have handled differently. I should have trusted my instincts sooner, been more cautious. But I also learned that sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands. That betrayal isn't just about the other person, it's about how you respond. And I chose to respond with clarity and resolve, not with fury or revenge for revenge's sake, but to reclaim my dignity. I finally feel like I'm moving forward, not just surviving, but starting to live again. The pain will fade and the scars will serve as reminders, not of betrayal, but of strength, of how I refuse to be the victim of lies anymore. And truthfully, I'm glad I did what I did. It's not about revenge for the sake of hurting her. It's about setting boundaries, protecting myself, and making sure I never get played like that again. In the end, I learned that trust is a fragile thing, and once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. But I also learned that life goes on, sometimes better, sometimes harder, but always moving forward. I may have lost her, but I found myself. And that's a victory I intend to hold on to.